We are honored once again to be joined by United States Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill from the 11th Congressional District, Essex, Morris, Passaic, and Sussex County. Congresswoman, great to have you with us again.
Well, thanks for having me back, Steve.
So let me ask you this. We're doing a series simply called Democracy at a Crossroads. It's a mini-series within all of our different programs. You'll see the graphic on the bottom of the screen. Is, in your opinion, as we tape on the 8th of December, be seen later, is democracy, quote unquote, at a crossroads, and what does that mean to you?
I think democracy is at a crossroads, but in some ways, democracy is always at a crossroads because it is a government of and by the people. And as we move forward, we're always facing new challenges, but certainly now with the pandemic, with some of the ways I think President Trump has undermined our democratic norms, some work we have to do to rebuild the strength of our democracy, I do think we're at a crossroads.
What impact do you actually believe the Trump presidency has had on, specifically, precisely, people's trust in the institutions of government and the way democracy is supposed to work?
Yeah, well, I think we've seen an erosion of trust in our government. In fact, it's easy to get frustrated with all of the ways in which we feel we're not moving forward in a way we'd like to. But even with the coronavirus pandemic, I know people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. We haven't gotten the second round of CARES Act funding. But we did act so quickly in Congress and in the country and government to pass the first round of CARES Act funding. We did better than really any nation on earth in addressing the economic concerns of the pandemic. But in other areas, there are ways in which over time, some of our democratic norms have been undermined. I often think that my generation hasn't done the best job because I grew up during the Cold War. And I have to tell you, Steve, it was so obvious how important democracy was. All you had to do was look at the Soviet Union, look at the freedoms that people there did not have. Speaking out against the government would result in being sent to Siberia. You couldn't travel. You couldn't go see family beyond the Iron Curtain. You couldn't worship how you wanted to worship. You just couldn't really live an independent, free life in the way you could in our country. And so it was so obvious. And I'm not sure we've correctly made the next generation understand how critical our democratic values are. And so I think when this president has worked to undermine some of those values, when he sent unmarked federal law enforcement onto the streets to pick up people without an arrest warrant, I'm not sure everyone sees, like I do, the parallels to some of what was going on under Pinochet. When we have a president who tries to undermine his political opponent, Joe Biden, by having a foreign power dig up dirt on him. I'm not sure everybody saw the attack on our democratic values and how critical it is that we have free and fair elections that I saw.
Congresswoman, hold that point right there. I'm going to challenge you in this way. Devil's advocate, you ready? Some of my friends who are big supporters of Trump, many in your district supporters of President Trump at the time, the president right now. Here's the response. Stop. Everybody does it.
Oh, Steve, you're right. It's heartbreaking to me.
And Congresswoman, I don't know how to respond.
I always respond with no. I mean, we've had discussions about this with chiefs of staff going back to Ronald Reagan. Nobody does this. And there are opportunities for them to have done this. Other presidents who were offered information from foreign countries on their opponent. And they refused that. They considered it. Certainly, they were looking at it to see if they thought it was ethical, and they decided it wasn't. That our democratic institutions, that our democratic elections were far more important than that. And I think we have got to get that same sense of service to country back into the political process.
So, and by the way, Congresswoman Sherrill's military service, I imagine, I don't know this, influences her view on this. And I'm not sure, but I think she told me in the past that why she chose to serve is part of why what she just explained. That being said, so many of the people in your district did vote for Donald Trump. 73+ million Americans voted for Donald Trump, the most that any incumbent president received. Obviously, Joe Biden got 80 million votes. What do you say to so many Trump supporters who, as we move into the Biden president, say, sorry, not my president, rigged? I'm not saying it's half of your district, but it's a good chunk. Say it's 35 to 40%. What do you say to them? that they don't accept Biden as the president.
Well, again, this to me is why we have work to do on our democratic norms, on people's understanding of the process, and why we can have faith in our democratic elections, because we should never have people in this country doubting the democratic elections. You can choose a different president. It's a democracy. We have that opportunity and that right. But once the election is over, every single American should feel that the election was run fairly and the decision was fair. They might not like the decision. I've lived long enough to not like every decision.
2016, a lot of Democrats didn't like the outcome. So in 2016, you may have been one of them, didn't like the outcome. Donald Trump was the president, no doubt about it.
Right.
He beat Hillary Clinton.
Yes. And I had been in that situation before where I had supported a different person for president. And, as somebody who is on the side that has suffered a loss at the polls, you look for then the pathways you can move forward and support the new president. I was hopeful we could get infrastructure done under President Trump's administration. I was looking for those pathways where we might have common ground. Can't
we even agree? We have former Senator Kevin O'Toole joining us today to talk about, who's also the chair of the Port Authority, he has an article that he wrote on the problem with the two extremes, that the folks on the extremes in your party, in the Democratic Party and in the Republican Party actually don't really want to get a lot of stuff done, don't want to compromise, don't want to move forward. Is that part of the problem in Congress where you are? Not take voters out of it for a second. Here's my question. Is there as much polarization and out here in Congress to the point where getting the most basic things done for veterans whom you care about so much, infrastructure, the Gateway Tunnel, a bill that supports people during COVID? Is everyone just saying, I'm here, I don't have to get together and work anything out because it's not in my interest?
I find that there are areas where you really can get stuff done. So, for example, I sit on the House Armed Services Committee. We're about to pass the National Defense Authorization Act. We passed that out of committee, a committee run by Democrats and Republicans. We passed that out of committee with a unanimous vote. We worked very hard. There were many things in that bill. It's a huge authorization bill to support our military, to move forward in a better way. There were things
Mitch McConnell supported in the Senate.
Mitch McConnell supported the Senate. It's been through conference. The Senate will pass that. We may have a veto by the president because he wanted to add some things into it that hadn't been through committee, that hadn't even been discussed until a week ago. So, but we passed it. We'll pass it through the Senate. We'll pass it through the House. It's a big bipartisan piece of legislation. We need to push through more things like that. Unfortunately, sometimes we need to realize what a deliberative legislative body does. What we do, and this is the system of government our founding fathers chose. It's the system of government I have faith in, because we go and we hash out all the different ideas and we come to compromises on where we can all get the broadest agreement, where we think it's best to move our country. That's how the body works. It's, there are often pieces of legislation that if Mikie Sherrill wrote that piece of legislation, it would look different. But I'm very proud of what I was able to get done on different measures. We have to understand that, because we can't just come to a standstill because we don't agree on every phrase in the legislation.
Let me ask you this. Joe Biden will be the president as we tape this program. He's the president-elect. This will be seen in the first quarter of 2021. How do you actually believe his interaction with Congress? And again, we're taping on the 8th of December. What happens in Georgia with 2 United States Senate races will have a huge impact on whether the Republicans control the Senate, the Democrats do control the House, or whether the Democrats, in fact, have a 50-50 split in the Senate, which would mean the vice president, Kamala Harris, would be the 51st vote for Democrats. We don't know. But assume for a second it's split government. Democrats in the Senate, Democrats in the House, Republicans in the Senate. Joe Biden, been in the legislature, been in the Senate. What kind of leadership do you think he would provide that would be different from a policy point of view dealing with Congress?
Joe Biden has said, and I think his record shows, that he's a uniter, that he's somebody that wants to bring people together. He wants to work to get to make sure that we get the best we can done for the American people. If you just watched the convention, you saw how many times he spoke of uniting the country, of bringing people together. He said numerous times he's going to be a president for everyone, not just people who support him. I'm hoping that that means, and I think that means, that he will be very willing to work with Congress, to work with a divided Congress if we have that, to get to agreement on legislation we need to pass for the American people.
Yeah. You know, I was watching a debate the other day. This will be old news, but it was a debate between the incumbent senator in Georgia, Kelly Loeffler, I think her name is, against the Democratic candidate who I believe is the minister at the Abyssinian Baptist Church where Dr. King did his work and made a difference. She kept calling him, she's a Republican, he's a Democrat. This isn't about that race. It's about something bigger, and I want you to respond to it. The radical, socialist, left-wing, dangerous, is that who you are? Is that who the Democrats are? Is that what we're supposed to be afraid of in our country?
You know, Steve, that is not who we are. And that kind of rhetoric, I think, undermines what we could get done in Congress. Because what it does is it's fear-mongering. It scares people in districts. If somebody in leadership is saying that someone is an extremist and scary and you should be afraid of them, it scares people in the district. And then you try to go back and legislate and they don't want to do anything with the other side. Because
but excuse me, you do have some left-wing Democrat, I shouldn't say left-wing, very progressive, bordering on socialist. Some say, yeah, I am a socialist. They're part of your party. But
we aren't socialists. We're Democrats. I have to tell you, as I mentioned, I grew up during the Cold War. I don't believe in socialism. I don't think it's good government. I am very proudly not a socialist. The majority of my party is not, people aren't socialist. Joe Biden is not a socialist. You look at the cabinet Joe Biden is working on, they're not socialists.
Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi is not a socialist. You know, that's not who we are as Democrats. Yeah. And I think the constant fear-mongering makes it really difficult when Republicans then do want to work with Democrats to come to those agreements, because suddenly everyone back at home is thinking, why are you working with them? You said they were crazy. Why are you working with them? Yeah. So I've heard that too. I'll tell you, you know, I think it acts to divide us in an incredibly unhealthy way. We can have disagreements about economics or policies or how we think the legislation should be written, but to try to paint anybody who doesn't share your political beliefs as somebody who is trying to undermine this country, or somebody
who's less American. Who's less American.
I mean, we're in a, this is again.
Imagine saying that about you with the service thing.
I mean, it's so important. We've chosen democracy in this country because we want to hear different points of view.
Yeah. Hey, 20 seconds on this. Democracy at a crossroads. Where's the silver lining? Please give it to us. Give us reason to be hopeful, Congresswoman.
I think crossroads are really opportunities. And I think maybe, like I said, I didn't realize maybe some of the ways people didn't understand how incredibly important our democratic norms are. I think we have opportunities to show the American people how we can lead in government, to rebuild faith in our government. Because I have to tell you, Steve, as I'm moving forward and all the things I need to work on, we need to get the Gateway Tunnel funded. We need to get rid of the state and local tax deduction cap. We need to make sure we get health care to everyone and they can afford it and they can afford their prescription drugs. But when you're talking about these huge issues, people are not going to support you on those if they don't think government can do it well. So we need to show the American people that we can govern, that we can lead. And I'll tell you, one area where I think the American people can be very proud is the CARES Act.
Is the CARES Act.
The CARES Act.
The first time.
The first CARES Act.
As we tape, Congresswoman, I got to let you go, but we will see what happens. Fingers crossed that there's another round, correct?
Yeah, if I have anything to do with it, there will be another round. Yeah, that is correct, Steve.
That is United States Congresswoman Mikie Sherrill, happens to be a neighbor of mine. You don't see her much because she's either in Washington or running around. How many kids do you have again?
I have 4 kids, a lot of homeschooling.
Yes, multitasking is the word for 2021 again. Congresswoman, all the best to you and your family.
You too. Thanks so much.
You got it. I'm Steve Adubato. Thank you so much for watching.
Think Tank with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by RWJ Barnabas Health, New Jersey Sharing Network, Rutgers University, Newark, PSE&G, United Airlines, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, Operating Engineers, Local 825, Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, and by IBEW Local 102. Promotional support provided by Insider NJ and by Meadowlands Chamber.
If you need to see a doctor, RWJ Barnabas Health has 2 easy ways to do it from anywhere. You can see an urgent care provider 24/7 on any device with our Telemed app. Or use our website to book a virtual visit with an RWJ Barnabas Health Medical Group provider or specialist, even as a new patient. You've taken every precaution, and so have we, so don't delay your care any longer. RWJ Barnabas Health. Let's be healthy together.